Welcome back to episode 97 of the Guardian Project podcast. I'm your host, Andy. When I wrote this intro, I had to start from scratch.
Oh,
Yeah.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Every time.
Every week, it's from scratch. Other than the I'm your host, Andy, sometimes the and. But the rest of it, it's all from scratch.
That's right. Well, and I'm your other host, Mike. And my original guess about the best school of Strixhaven was right. Of course, it was Silver Quill. But, I had an Inkling.
Oh, that was good. That was a good one.
Please listen carefully.
And this is the podcast where we talk about all things Magic the Gathering.
But mostly Commander.
So, speaking of Strixhaven, I got to open a bunch of Strixhaven this past weekend. I got the new Commander 21 precons, and I got a couple of boxes. My first pack that I opened had a Demonic Tutor Mystical Archive in it.
Very nice.
Yeah, felt good starting out on a high.
Mm-hmm.
The first box was better than the second, but I got Approach of the Second Sun and the I think it's pronounced Galazeth, Prismari, the Prismari dragon, which is cool. A lot of these cards are going into deck, so I enjoyed opening those packs, and the Mythical Archive cards, oh, they're so good.
And you had mentioned that the thick Commander cards and the Commander precons were really nice too.
They are thick. Yeah. They are not those oversized cards anymore. You get it's the same size as a card, but it feels like a hard piece of cardboard. And it's kind of nice because you can set that out. I'm not sure what it's for still, but I would appreciate setting it on top of Sakashima of 1,000 Faces as if you made a copy of your Commander or something. If you're in blue, if you're playing Adrix and Nev, which is what I did pretty much all weekend, you could use that for the Sakashima or any other clone, I guess, if you want. But most of them are going to die.
It doesn't fit in the sleeve at all or anything like that?
I didn't try, but I doubt it.
Okay. Because I say maybe you could just use that as your Commander, and then you could take the face Commander and go put it in the 99 of one of your other decks or something.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Yeah. A lot of people don't, or they sleeve their Commander in a different color sleeve, and I feel like those people would want to play with the hard cardboard. It's nice, but I still don't know what it's for. I'm not sure. Maybe collecting. I don't know what the oversized cards are for, though.
Also collecting, or you could play with them.
You could put those out on the battlefield, just so you know that I'm playing with Nahiri the Lithomancer, which is the one that I like the most, the giant.
Yeah, listen, you already told me you're playing Atraxa, Praetor's Voice. I don't need to be reminded by a card that is the size bigger than my hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, so I didn't get to open any of my Strixhaven yet. Mine's coming this coming weekend.
To the mail.
I'll be able, and I plan on opening a couple booster boxes, maybe a couple collector booster boxes. And then I have the precons coming as well. So I'm excited for this coming weekend.
The foils do seem better. I will say that. The foils do seem better, although you saw before we went to the studio to record that I did get a Claim the Firstborn Mythical Archive foil. It's curved, but it is not
It's not Commander Legends curved.
Oh, no. I mean, this one is you put it in a sleeve and it's definitely going to flatten out. And the precon commanders were not warped at all. They came in, and they were not stuck inside the front piece of the plastic.
Right.
They were sealed with the rest of the deck finally, which was really nice. And I don't remember if last year's were or not, but I do remember that they used to. I feel like they came separate at some point.
Yeah, they came separate. They came separate a long time ago.
I feel like it was a long time ago. So I'm just not sure. I'm not sure, but I played with those. I got to play with a couple of the other precons this weekend, so I'm excited to talk about that this week. But we do have an announcement. We do have a new patron, Kyle Arnold. Thank you so much for joining the family. If you want to support, you can head to patreon.com/guardianprojectpod and donate at any dollar amount. And we are working on getting designs done right now for our upcoming playmats. So those are still in the works. I'm getting excited.
Yeah, very cool. And if you're looking for any other way to support the podcast, wherever you are listening to the podcast on currently, if you could subscribe, rate, review, and definitely leave some comments. We love interacting with our listeners in the comments of our YouTube videos. I don't know if we've ever interacted with a comment on Spotify or anything, so maybe that's a good challenge for this week. Leave a comment if you are listening to this podcast on Spotify.
I don't even have Spotify. Do you have Spotify?
Yeah, I listen to it on Spotify.
All right, so
It
Coyle's
won't
going to
be
go
me leaving
check.
a comment, though.
Coyle's going to go check Spotify, I guess, for this week's episode. So Coyle, what are we talking about this week?
So last week we talked about Strixhaven standard set and all the cards we were really excited for to play in Commander from that. So this week we are going to focus on the Commander decks, and we're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about how we like the decks, the way that they are constructed by Wizards of the Coast. We're going to talk about some of the brand new cards and some of the uses that we're going to get out of these brand new cards. And then we're also going to talk about some of the reprints that are coming in these, some that we like, how we feel about them. And then it's actually not on our agenda, but since you play with so many of the precons this week, we're also going to get your hot takes on all these precons as we go through.
Hot takes. I didn't play with all of them. But
well, with 4 of
but
them.
we've got
three of them?
Yeah, I played with 3 of them.
Okay.
So I played with 3 of them. Yeah, I'm excited. So let's transition. I don't have a transition. What is it? We're going to go. I saw a bold plagiarist, but I don't want to suggest that we go plagiarize it because that's really not good.
Because we're plagiarizing the roll into the next section by copying bold plagiarist.
Yeah, but I also thought of Guillaume Master Chef, and I was going to say let's cook it, but now we're cooking.
Now we're
Insert
cooking with bacon.
Insert transition music here. Okay, so this week we are talking about Commander 2021 decks and what we think about the strategy right out of the box. So let's start with the first one here, which is the Lorehold Legacies deck. So this is the red-white deck, which is led by Osgir the Reconstructor. So Osgir is a 4/4 giant artificer for 2, a red and a white that has vigilance and says pay 1, sack an artifact. Target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn, or pay X, tap it, exile an artifact with mana value X from your graveyard, create 2 tokens that are copies of that exiled card, do this at sorcery speed. This one is one of the decks I did not get any experience with. It also has one alternate commander here in the Boros colors, or I'm sorry, the Lorehold colors.
That's right.
Which is Alebo, Ancient Witness, 3, a red and a white for a 4/5 golem that says other artifact creatures you control have haste, and whenever one or more artifact creatures you control attack, Alebo, Ancient Witness deals X damage to any target, and you scry X, where X is the number of tapped artifacts you control. So of these 2, I like Alebo a lot more. But I see the fun stuff that you can do with Osgir. But this reminds me so much of my Duretti deck, but just adding white, that I don't know if the strategy is for me, but I like what I see happening in these colors as opposed to, you have to swing and you get double strike, and if you do that, you do. That's what red-white very much just felt like.
Sure.
And I did not want to do that, and I don't want to be playing with swords.
That's fair.
That's me. I don't want to play with swords, and I built a Boros deck that didn't necessarily care about swords, but it was still commander damage. This is much more my up my alley, but I still think I want to go with the secondary one because I want to deal X damage where I'm tapping artifacts to do crazy things.
Right.
What do you think of this deck?
So this was actually the first, Osgir was the first face commander that we really kind of got to see when the release is coming out. So Osgir was the first commander that I actually brewed from Commander 21. And I love graveyard shenanigans, so this was really fun for me to brew it. But just as the pre-constructed deck, I think Alebo fits the theme of the deck better. So this may be one of those instances like 2 years ago when the commander deck came out and Savine was the face commander for that Jeskai deck, but it was a better deck if you just took Savine and you flipped
to Elsha
of the Infinite. So maybe this deck actually, I think, would be better with Alebo as the face commander versus Osgir, even though I really like Osgir's abilities and what Osgir can do better. The deck seems to be more focused around swinging with artifact creatures, which is what Alebo cares about. Osgir in that will make your artifact creatures stronger by sacrificing artifacts, or just get you incremental value by making more of these artifact creatures, but doesn't really fit the theme. So I think Alibu probably would be a better face commander. I don't love the strategy of swinging with artifact creatures. Just not something that I typically like doing. I love what Osgear does. I kind of wish they would have built stronger into the Osgear strategy than they did the Alibu strategy in this precon.
I will say, though, that with these precons, it doesn't feel like 3 completely separate decks. Like Lord Windgrace, that was 3 different decks. You had Lord Windgrace, you had the spider that didn't care about spiders. Mm-hmm. And then, what was that third commander in that deck?
The Hydra that brings things back from the dead.
But it didn't feel like a Lands Matters deck, right?
It was it was a graveyard.
This feels both care completely about artifacts. It's great. I like that. And it doesn't feel like they built 3 separate commander decks with each commander that cares about like 2 cards really well and then like 15 generically. This feels like either one you go with, you're probably going to enjoy the play.
Yeah.
I think though my favorite card from this is probably Monologue Tax. So the enchantment 2 and a white that says whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you create a treasure token. I'm not sure what it is about people barfing things out and giving me value, but I'm here for it with that and Smothering Tithe.
Oh yeah.
Let me have those. And then also Cursed Mirror giving me an artifact that costs 3. You got a rock, but it could also become a copy of any creature when it enters the battlefield with haste.
Yeah, I'm still really interested to see what the judge rulings on that are going to be. If it enters as a copy or if it enters and then becomes a copy. Because that is pretty important to see if you get the enter the battlefield effect from the mirror or not. But I think we should talk about Archaeomancer's map. I think this is the one that, everyone's kind of talking about, the mono white, quote unquote ramp spell. So the Archaeomancer is a 2 and a white artifact. It says when Archaeomancer's map enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic planes, reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player controls more lands than you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So again, yeah, it's like mono white ramp, but it's like burgeoning, kind of like a white burgeoning, but it puts planes into your hand, and it does say basic planes, but it doesn't have that basic planes clause for putting a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So that part's kind of nice. So you can play it outside of mono white. But yeah, it's an artifact in this deck. You'll be able to get 2 copies with Osgear, and then hopefully you'll be able to ramp out pretty hardcore.
Yeah. So we also wanted to touch on reprints on each deck, right? So for this one, I think one of the biggest here is the Hellkite Tyrant, which is nice. Although I think it was an accidental reprint that just ended up being very much expensive because of all of the treasures and things that we have seen in the past couple of sets that have come out.
For sure.
So Hellkite Tyrant is a very good reprint here. Dragon that says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. But it can steal folks' artifacts when it deals combat damage to them. So really, really good reprint there. And then, the artifacts that are just the ramp in this, you've got 1,000-year elixir, which is also great, but I appreciate that they're putting Arcane Signet in all of these and Soul Ring. Unfortunately, I feel like Arcane Signet is now being considered just a generic rock that everybody puts in their deck. And I remember them talking about it, saying this was a mistake, but here we are. So at least they're going to make them available.
When I first started building decks, that's how I felt about Felwar Stone, and there wasn't enough copies of Felwar Stone out there. So to me, I'm kind of happy that the Arcane Signet, and I really do like that 1,000-year elixir reprint. I thought that was really, really cool. And then some of the lands, actually, I thought was, there's nothing particularly expensive in the land base, but I'm just really impressed that they are going to print lands like Slayer Stronghold and Sunhome Fortress of the Legion into precons. Even the artifact lands, Ancient Den, Great Furnace, and Darksteel Citadel got reprinted in here. Battlefield Forge, a Pain land. Pain lands used to be kind of sought after or expensive. I think the Tainted Wood is still over $1 or $2, and that one shows up in the Witherbloom deck. But it's good to see some of the faster lands, I guess, lands that will tap for either color that don't come in tapped. Some of the faster artifacts. It definitely looks like that's where the game of Commander is going, and Wizard of the Coast is helping to push it in that direction at this point. So I personally like to see that kind of thing, making fast mana more accessible to more players.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. So the next deck we have here is the Prismari deck. So this is Prismari Performance, helmed by Zaphi, Thunder Conductor, which is referred to as Thunder Collector in its text.
Interesting.
So there was in fact a typo there. So it is a human shaman, a 1/4 for 2, a blue and a red that has Magecraft. When you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you scry one. If the mana value of that spell was 5 or greater, you create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. If the mana value is 10 or greater, Zaphi Thunder Collector deals 10 damage to an opponent chosen at random. And the secondary commander here is Veyran, Voice of Duality. So it is a 2/2 Efreet wizard for 1, a blue and a red with Magecraft. So again, when you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, Veyran, Voice of Duality gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And then if casting or copying an instant or sorcery spell causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, it triggers an additional time. So it's a mouthful, and it does a lot. Both of these have so much text on them. This is the other deck that I have the least amount of experience with of the ones that I do. But I do think that this deck suffers from the... it wants to cast so many big spells with one commander and then just cast a lot of spells with the other commander. But I think the incremental scry one, if you're playing, I guess, a deck that has humans, there's that. But I feel like Zaphi should have been a wizard.
Yeah,
it's a human shaman.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely should have been a wizard, but that's the way that they were structuring all the schools and saying, if you're from this school, you're not a wizard, you're a shaman, because then everyone would be wizards. And honestly, that would probably be a problem.
I don't know. The Veyran Voice of Duality is an Efreet wizard, so I guess they gave you a wizard there.
There you go.
So they did give you a wizard there. So I like the Prismari colors here. I think that it feels a little different than Izzet in that you're playing spells that might be larger as opposed to just a ton of tiny spells, which is not always a bad thing. But I think the commanders themselves, Veyran wants you to copy or cast and copy a lot of spells to make things trigger multiple times, whereas Zaphi wants to cast just big spells.
Yeah. When I was looking through this list, I think the one biggest complaint that I had is there wasn't really a clear win condition coming from the deck, and maybe I'm looking at it too critically because I'm looking at a precon, but just with Zaphi casting all of your spells that are 5 CMC or greater to make a giant board of 4/4s to swing out with doesn't seem like the greatest strategy in the world. This deck seems like it would be a lot of fun to play. It doesn't seem like it is poised to win very well. And some of the win conditions like our Crackling Drake and these other creatures that just get pumped up a lot from having instants and sorceries in your graveyard. I don't love this deck because of that. That being said, there's a lot of cards in this deck that I want to rip out of this deck and put them in other decks. Yeah, I think playing with this, you're playing with like Metallurgic Summoning, Sudburn's Invocation, and Swarm Intelligence, which costs 5, 6, and 7. So the mana, that means you're waiting to cast relevant spells until after you've gotten that mana, right.
which is a struggle. And I talked about this deck with you before we recorded, in that this is the deck where I want to throw in. I want to play with the cards from the precon, but I want to be able to get to the mana to cast an Apex of Power, which is 7 red. So I need 10 mana, but as soon as you start throwing in like a Mana Crypt or a Mana Vault or a Grim like if you have any of those cards that are just the fast ramp to get to this, you start to just move out of a precon power level.
Right. And
I feel like when we get to the next deck, they're not on the same page.
Right.
This one didn't feel like it was on the same page.
Right. But let's talk about some of these brand new cards that are in this deck.
Yes.
Because they are really, really interesting. So Creative Technique is a sorcery for 5 mana for 4 and a red that has Demonstrate, which is one of these new keywords that says you can copy the spell as long as you choose an opponent, and they'll also get a copy of the spell. So it says shuffle your library, then reveal cards from the top of it until you reveal a non-land card. Exile that card and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So it is the next non-land. It's not the next creature. It's not the next permanent. It's not the next instant or sorcery. So it's kind of a new take on a polymorph effect just to get the next spell. I guess there's it's not Warp World, but there's a card that's like that. Like whenever you cast a card, you instead exile cards from the top of your library until you reveal another card that shares a type with it, and you cast that card instead. It's going to be something like that with Creative Technique, just getting random free spells from the top of your library, and I just think it's kind of cool. Slap it in a Chaos deck, or if you can break it by making like a 95 land deck and just get your free spells, it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, see, I think my favorite card that came from this deck is the legendary human wizard Riona Fire Dancer. So a 3/4 human wizard for 3 red that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, create X tokens that are copies of another target creature you control, where X is 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. They gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So this is you obviously can't make a bunch of copies of a legendary creature. I mean, you could, but they're all going to die immediately. But like then the amount of discussion surrounding like making 15 Dockside Extortionists or just anything crazy, it just seems super fun. And maybe I'm not thinking outside the box here, but I would still like to make that many Dockside Extortionists.
Yeah, or Combustible Gearhawks, or you take a mono red ETB deck, shove all those creatures in here, make it a ton of copies of those cards. Exactly.
As far as reprints go in this deck, Coil, what do you have your eye on? I like the Pyromancer's Goggles. I feel like this card, it still hasn't found the right home in any deck that I have, but it's a legendary artifact. You tap it for red for 5 mana, but then it says when this mana is spent to cast a red instant or sorcery, you can copy that spell. So you copy it and choose new targets for the copy. I think this is my favorite reprint from this deck.
I would have to say that if you were to ask me 2 years ago, you look at this deck and you look at all the reprints in it, and you said, in this deck we're going to get Dig Through Time, we're going to get Ponder, and we're going to get Blasphemous Act. And you go, holy moly, there's a ton of value in that deck. That's really great. Those cards aren't really worth anything anymore. But I really like the fact that they're printing them into precons, because those are important spells that I think are really good in casual Magic that maybe people aren't playing in casual Magic. Like Dig Through Time I don't see in casual Magic very often, and I think it should be played more. It's an absolutely fantastic spell. So I was happy to see those. Again, unfortunate that they aren't worth anything. But in the artifact section, I kind of mentioned it before, we're getting Izzet Signet and Talisman of Curiosity. So it's a push for faster mana. But as we mentioned at the very beginning of this deck really needs the extra and fast mana in order to get to those bigger spells faster with Zafi. So it's nice to see, in my opinion, the faster artifact ramp coming in these decks.
Yeah, and I do think that this one is of the decks as of today, the recording. I do think this one has the least amount of value by almost $20 in some instances. Right. So moving on to the next deck here, this is the Quantum Quandrix deck. So this is the deck that is helmed by Adrex and Niv, twin casters. And Adrex and Niv, pulling them up right now because my image is not in front of me. They are a Merfolk Wizard for 2/2 that has for 2, a green and a blue with Ward 2. So this is our new evergreen keyword instead of Hexproof that says whenever this creature becomes a target of spell or an ability an opponent controls, you counter it unless they pay 2 colorless. But then it says if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many tokens are created instead. So we've got a Parallel Lives here with a secondary commander of Essex Fractal Bloom, so a 4/4 fractal creature for 4, a green and a blue with flying that says the first time you would create 1 or more tokens during each of your turns, you may instead choose a creature other than Essex Fractal Bloom and create that many tokens that are copies of that creature. So this deck is making lots of creature tokens. And it's everything I want to be doing in Simic. And it's great because the actual card Parallel Lives is way up. The last time I looked, it was over $50. It's got a single printing from the Innistrad block. So it's been a long time since we've seen it. But this out of the gate, when I played this, I had a turn 1 Soul Ring with a Simic Signet, which felt really good. But your commander on turn 2 into just making creatures on turn 3 was bananas.
Yeah.
But it's refreshing to see a Simic commander that isn't play land, draw a card. Whenever you draw a card, you can play a land. And whenever you do this, you get to draw a card. It felt great that it didn't include draw 19 by doing what you just already do.
See, and I felt kind of the opposite, that this was, although it's not a landfall, gain life, draw cards card. It is like a thing that we've already had, maybe not on a legendary creature.
And I don't think we've seen it in Simic. I mean, No,
it's in green though.
It's in green, yes.
So you can play it in Simic.
You can.
It's kind of, it just seems, to me, it seems boring. I understand, making tokens is always fun. It's definitely a really good value creature. I think Essex Fractal Bloom is much more interesting of a legendary creature and a lot easier, or not easier to build around, more interesting to build around. It'd be much easier to build around the Face Commander because you're just doubling your tokens. And the one thing that really gets my goose about the Face Commanders is that it doesn't work with the mascot of the Quandrix school, because fractals are 0/0 tokens, and making a second 0/0 token will just die immediately.
Well, if you make tokens that enter with counters on them, you'll be okay.
Right, but the fractals don't. They get the counters after they enter.
Yeah.
So you cannot get double fractals, which is disappointing to me coming from the Quandrix commander deck, but it does look fun.
I would have to look that up. It was interesting because I believe it said that they entered, and then, but if it does say you create a 0/0, then put it on.
That's correct.
Then yeah, they don't necessarily work in that situation. But I did have Adrix and Nev out with Essex, and that was pretty cool, making a copy of someone else's Windreader Sphinx, and then getting 2 Windreader Sphinx, and then convoking in a Hornet Queen and getting multiple Hornet Queens with insects, and then swinging and drawing all those cards.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was really fun. I made some basic updates. I mean, I think I changed like 20 cards in the deck. But this deck, it feels like what I want to be doing. It doesn't feel like playing Tatiova. It doesn't feel like playing, Edric Spymaster of Trest, or like Asai, or Verazal, or Rolesk, or Experiment Crash, which are just like, let's play with +1/+1 counters, or just play a land and draw a card. At least it was making tokens, which felt different. And looking at the top Simic commanders, you've got Tatiova, Arixmithes, Kinnan, Kumena, Krufix, Azuri, Edric, Rashmi, and Pirantuthi, and none of them are token decks in most cases. Edric, it can be, I guess it can be. I mean, any of them can be. But I really like this deck a lot. From the new cards, I really, really liked playing Perplexing Test. So I got to return all creatures to their owner's hands, not the creature tokens, the non-token creatures. So that was cool because you get to keep almost everything that you make. And there's a lot of upgrades for the Adrix and Nev deck that just make creature tokens.
Okay.
So you don't care about the spell. It really doesn't affect you.
Right.
And if you return your commander, then it only costs 4. I do like the effectively costed commanders this year.
Okay. Yeah. No, that is very true. They are really, really well costed. From the new cards, I want to mention 2. I know we've been sticking to 1, but I'm going to mention 2.
Okay.
Because I'm that kind of person. Spawning Kraken is the first one. So it's for 5 and a blue. You get a 6/6 Kraken. It says whenever a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent you control deals combat damage to a player, create a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token. So this card isn't particularly supported well in this deck. There aren't a lot of other Krakens and stuff, but when it hits, it can make a 9/9. And a lot of people are including this in their Sea Monsters decks that they have. And I do have a Sea Monsters deck. This isn't going in that. This is actually going in my Changelings deck, because every time a Changeling hits, making a 9/9 token seems really, really strong. So if you have a Changelings deck, I definitely would consider Spawning Kraken in there, because it's insane value. And the other one is Theoretical Duplication, and that's a 2 and a blue instant. It says whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control this turn, create a token that's a copy of that creature. I think this can be a really good, get you a card for someone that does like a mass polymorph or mass graveyard reanimation, throws all their cards from their hand on the battlefield, a giant, not Collected Company. I guess it could work for Collected Company, but one of those giant X green spells where you get to put all your creatures that you find in the top part of your library onto the graveyard. Just being able to theoretical duplication before that comes down seems like it would be a really cool trick. The first thing that did come to my mind with this card was Dockside Extortionist, but be careful because your Dockside Extortionist enter the battlefield effect will resolve before your opponents, and they will get a treasure for every treasure that you just got. So just be wary about that. But those are two cards that I'm really excited for from this deck.
You know, the other one that I'm really excited to play, though, is Ruxa Patient Professor. So I was building this weekend. I didn't pull the trigger on ordering anything because I had the shell of an Iula deck really kind of put together. So Ruxa Patient Professor is a 4/4 bear druid for 2 and 2 green that says when it enters the battlefield or attacks, return target creature with no abilities from your graveyard to your hand, and creatures with no abilities that you control get +1/+1. And then you can have creatures you control with no abilities assign their damage as though they weren't blocked. So they really get like the Thorn Elemental ability, which is great. So you can play like Muragonda Petroglyphs, which is really what is on this card, which is creatures with no abilities get, I believe Muragonda gives +2/+2 though. Okay. But you can't play cards that say creatures you control have vigilance because then you gave them an ability and they lose all of their other abilities. So you can play, and I think Gaia's Anthem gives just creatures get +1/+1 or creatures you control. It's just, do you want to just be playing a vanilla deck? Is it going to be able to stand on its own? I'm not sure, and I don't think every single creature in the deck has to be this has no abilities.
Right.
But the problem is you can't give them an ability because then they probably lose multiple like power and toughness.
And that's interesting. I never put two and two together why it says assign combat damage as though they weren't blocked instead of just giving them all trample, because that would just be a nombo if it gave them all trample.
It would give them trample, yes. Yeah, so they are you can have them assign the damage as though they were not blocked. And I guess if you can make a bunch of, I mean, in a lot of cases people refer to these as bears, you know, a 2/2 for 2 that does really nothing. And they become 3/3s, but if you can play out Muragonda Petroglyphs, then they're 5/5s. And if you have, I don't know, 4 5/5 swinging, you know, and you go, I'm just going to assign that damage directly to face, and you deal 20 instead, as long as they're not taking lethal, they're essentially unblockable.
For sure.
But you can't give them vigilance. So maybe you can find a way to have them untap after combat. You're in mono green here, so you can't play.
You can play Seedborn Muse or something.
You could play.
You can't play Reconnaissance.
You can't play Reconnaissance because that's in white. Right. But if you played I guess this as Secret Commander, you could maybe and have something in green white. I mean, whatever to give that the pseudo vigilance. But I like it a lot. I'd like to try and play with this card some. And then the lands here, I think we've got a Rogue's Passage, which is really nice. I like seeing that Yavimaya Coast again. I like the Pain lands. I'm always a fan of Pain lands. I think the ones that I'd like to see more, right, are the enemy colored Pain lands. So the ones, because there are still some of them that are around $10. Some have been printed 5 or 6 times. Some of them are printed like, I don't know if
once or
all
twice.
Of them have been even entirely. So that is
so some of the reprints that we wanted to talk about.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, those were mine.
Yes. Okay. So I wanted to point out the fact that they are printing Rapid Hybridization as their 1 blue creature removal spell in this deck, rather than Pongify, which they have been reprinting for a while. Like over the past year, they've been reprinting Pongify over Rapid Hybridization. So it's nice to see the other 1 mana blue creature removal spell. 1 mana blue instant says destroy target creature. They get to make for Rapid Hybridization, it's a 3/3 green frog lizard. For Pongify, it's a 3/3 green ape creature token. And then it's nice to see Rite of Replication, Master Biomancer.
Oh, I forgot my right is on my notes right here.
and Azuri's Predation were all reprinted in this. Simic Signet and Talisman of Curiosity. Simic Signet reprinted, Talisman of Curiosity not printed in this. I would have liked to see that, but I understand why maybe they wouldn't want to shove all of the fast mana in all of the decks.
This deck also has Rampant Growth, Beast Within, Kodama's Reach, Crowsand Grip. I mean, this is like the basic. Those are the go-tos that I grab for all my Simic decks. Not saying I'm not being creative here, but they're just so good. I like them.
There's no Cyclonic Rift in here, though.
That's fine. It's not necessary in every deck, and in most cases, it's a 2 CMC spell.
For sure.
You can see me lose on a YouTube game from a couple of months ago by casting it for 2 instead of 7. I feel like if I cast it for 7, I would have done much better. Moving on to our next deck here. This is our Silverquill Statement deck. So this has Brina the Demagogue and Felissa, Fang of Silverquill. So Brina the Demagogue is a 1/3 bird warlock for 1, a white, and a black. It has flying and says whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, if that opponent has more life than another one of your opponents, that attacking player draws a card, and you put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature you control. And then Felissa, Fang of Silverquill is a 3/2 vampire wizard for 2, a white, and a black, with flying. Does not look like she's flying, but I appreciate it. With Mentor, and then whenever a non-token creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, create X tapped 2/1 white and black Inkling creature tokens with flying, where X is the number of counters you had on it. I like the Inklings, and Brina, I will say this is the next deck that I played the most with over the weekend. I played against some folks in our Discord, and Brina plays a lot more like Edric, Spymaster of Trust, than you might think. So you don't have to deal the damage. That's great. You just have to swing at an opponent that has more life than another opponent. So it is encouraging you not to swing at your opponent with the lowest amount of life.
Right.
And then you don't have to deal the damage. So as soon as you swing, you get to draw it. And giving someone 2+1/+1, giving the Brina player 2+1/+1 counters doesn't seem like much until Brina has 8+1/+1 counters on it. And then you go, oh, okay, this might actually be a problem soon, because unless you have an actual destroy spell, you're not going to be able to block it and kill it.
Right, because it's flying. Exactly.
So this one I like a lot. I did not see Felissa, Fang of Silverquill come out yet, but I did see a lot of the other new card, Nils, Discipline Enforcer. So this is another legendary creature, a human cleric, for 2 and a white, and it's a 2/2 that says at the beginning of your end step, for each player, you put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature that player controls. And then those creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless they pay X, where X is the number of counters on that creature. And this deck has vow counters, it has +1/+1 counters. If they're putting any sort of counter on their creature at all, it got to the point where I was playing with some creatures that had counters on them, and I was like, oh, I can't afford to pay 4 extra to swing at you, so I'm just going to swing it elsewhere. It's fine. Doesn't feel political. I mean, it doesn't really feel that political, but definitely is. But it's very subtle.
Yeah, well, it's got flash, so you can, steal a big turn from someone or something like that. Do be wary about...
What has flash?
Bold Plagiarist.
Oh, just the deck in general?
Bold Plagiarist has flash.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was like, what are we talking about? I thought we were talking about Nils. Okay.
Yeah, so Bold Plagiarist is one of the reprint cards that I really like that has flash. It's a 3 and a black vampire rogue 2/2. This is whenever an opponent puts 1 or more counters on a creature they control, they put the same number and kind of counters on Bold Plagiarist. I just thought this card was really, really cool. You do have to worry about playing around -1/-1 counter strategies with it, because you don't get a choice of where these counters are going. You do have to put them on Bold Plagiarist. But it kind of, that particular card, I think, really goes into the way that the Silverquill deck here is trying to play naturally, and that's very political. You're playing with your opponent's cards and what your opponent is doing. To me, this deck just seemed like the most fun because of cards like this, because of really fun interactions with your opponents and with your opponent's cards and with your opponent's decks.
Yeah. So can we talk about my favorite card from this deck, though?
Maybe.
It might be Ink Shield. So this card's great. It is an instant for 3, a white, and a black that says prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to you this turn. For each 1 damage prevented this way, create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. So I would like to just not take, 10, and then get 20 power worth of flying creature tokens that I can just crack back out on the next turn.
I have this marked down as the new Arachnogenesis.
Actually, it feels very much so.
It costs 2 more, and it's in 2 colors rather than 1, and you prevent the damage. So Arachnogenesis, you can gang block stuff and kill stuff. So that's the main
But these are 2/1 flyers.
2/1 flyers way better than 1/2 reachers. That's for sure.
Right now, the cards, it looks like it's pre-ordering around 5, or I guess not even pre-ordering. I guess some of these are out. So it's around $6. I think that's a good price. I'm not sure if it's going to go up or down much. I think it's fairly costed for what it does, and another white-black card to watch out for.
For sure. I also I wanted to mention quickly, Cunning Rhetoric, a 3-mana enchantment, is the most unique don't attack me enchantment that I've ever seen. Most of the don't attack me enchantments or Pillow Fort enchantments are either taxing people to attack you or they're draining your life in order to attack you. But Cunning Rhetoric is an enchantment. This is whenever an opponent attacks you and or one or more planeswalkers you control, you exile the top card of that player's library, and you may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. You can spend mana or mana of any color to cast it. So I think it's very unique in that you get to use your opponent's cards if they
against
attack
them. No, your words. I'm repeating the words back to you. They are your words. No, I think it's great. And if you're playing a deck that is stacking the top or rearranging it, you certainly aren't going to want to give somebody that spell.
Right.
So reprints for this, we've got a couple of relevant reprints here. I do like seeing the Deathbringer Liege. So this is the first reprint for this. So this is the split color card that gives creatures of each of the colors +1/+1. So other white creatures you control get +1/+1. Other black creatures you control get +1/+1. And whenever you cast a white spell, you may tap target creature. And whenever you cast a black spell, you may destroy target creature if it's tapped.
Yeah, no, it's it's not a card that I knew needed a reprint because I had never heard of the card before.
You know what's funny is I run these cards. I ran the black green one in Hepatra, and I run the blue red one in the Locust God, and I'm pretty sure that I run this in my Teysa Orzhov Scion because I'm just making a bunch of spirits. Mm-hmm. So it's a lord that some of them make creatures. Obviously, this one doesn't, but casting a black and a white spell, you can just basically destroy a creature.
Yeah, no, for sure. This particular reprint I'm about to talk about might not seem very significant because it's only a $3 card with this reprint, but it is the first reprint of Selfless Squire. So it's a 3 and a white human soldier with flash. It's a 1/1 that says when Selfless Squire enters the battlefield, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you this turn. Whenever damage that would be dealt to you is prevented, that many +1/+1 counters. You put that many +1/+1 counters on Selfless Squire. And what I just realized is this combos with our new Inkling shield because it says whenever damage is prevented, and our Ink shield is going to prevent damage and make 2/1s and pump our Selfless Squire that already prevented damage last turn because apparently we're playing a black-white Turbofog deck.
Turbofog. The other one that I really like here is Mikakoro, Center of the Sea. So this is a legendary land. This is the second time it's been reprinted. So it was in Masters 25 and now we're getting it again, but it's taps for colorless. Or you pay 2 and tap it and each player draws a card.
It's wonderful.
I love it.
It's probably the most significant reprint in this.
It's around $8 right now.
Yeah.
So there are some cards in here that are worth picking up if you don't have them, and that Selfless Squire is great. I can attest. I play it in a humans deck that has 4 fogs in it, and
it was like a $12 card or something. So actually,
it comes
down very significant. I was trying to pick it up for a deck last year, and that's how much it was. It's down to $3 in this reprint now. So very, very nice reprint.
Good. Thank you for the reprints.
Yeah. So next deck, I'm going to take this one.
Okay, you're going to start with this one.
I'm going to do this one. Okay, so this is Witherbloom. So this would normally be my Haymaker area of black-green, but not actually my favorite deck of the set. So Witherbloom is helmed by our face commander, Willow Dusk Essence Seer, which is a legendary Dryad Druid 3/3 where you can pay 1 generic mana and tap it, choose another target creature, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the amount of life you gained this turn, or the amount of life you lost this turn, whichever is greater. You can only activate it as a sorcery. Also has an alternate commander of Guillaume, Master Chef, or Giome, or
I think it's
like
Guillaume.
Guillaume. Troll Warlock 5/3 with Trample for 4 mana, 2 black and a green. This is at the beginning of your end step. Create a number of food tokens equals to the number of non-token creatures you had enter the battlefield under your control this turn. Then you can pay 1 generic and sacrifice a food, and target creature gains indestructible until end of turn, and you tap it. So this deck particularly wants to gain life.
I would like to go to the restaurant that Guillaume is the master chef at.
So that you can become indestructible and tapped?
Yes.
Lay down for a little nappy nap?
Well, I'm going to eat some food and take a nap. I mean, the flavor there is great. flavor.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, honestly, between these two, I'm drawn to Guillaume because we have not seen a ton of stuff that cares about food in Commander. They gave me a reason to play it. I have a reason to put my Feasting Troll King foil pre-release timestamp thing in a deck now.
Mm-hmm.
I like them both, but I think I like Guillaume far more.
I will say that I like Willow Dusk a lot better as the commander. I don't know how the precon plays out.
I have not. This is one I have not seen yet. Yeah. Still,
based on the cards in here, it seems like it is very, very heavily into the life gain strategy, less into the use life as a resource. It has some cards in there that do it, but it seems like it's weighted way heavier in the life gain strategy.
Listen, they put Dina Soul Steeper in here, which I think I mentioned as a card that I would be interested in, but I'm not sure if I actually said it on the show last week. But Dina it is a 1/3 Dryad Druid for a black and a green that says whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life, and then pay 1, sack another creature. Dina Soul Steeper gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. This is really great when it says each opponent loses 1 life.
Mm-hmm.
There's infinites that exist with Dina, but if you're going that hard into the life gain strategy, just having Dina out, you might be able to deal 5 or 6 just inherently.
No, for sure.
Oops, I did 6.
So yeah, and that's Dina. The reason we didn't mention, she's actually printed in the standard set. So yeah, we talked about,
in the precon.
Right. So if you're not picking up any packs or anything, and you're opening up a Witherbloom deck, you're gonna get one. So that's I guess the strategy, the gain life strategy. So for some of the new cards, I really like Blossoming Bog Beasts. This is a green creature for 4 and a green. You get a 3/3. This says whenever Blossoming Bog Beast attacks, you gain 2 life. Then creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. Honestly, I have decks that this is better than a Craterhoof Behemoth in. Way, way better than a Craterhoof Behemoth. I have a green-white life gain deck where every single turn I could be swinging for an extra +15/+15 in trample with all of my creatures. I think this particular card is really, really nuts and can... One problem that a lot of life gain strategy decks have in Commander is that they just take so long to win. They can only win with an alternate win con. Maybe that's Approach of the Second Sun, which is still going to take a few turns to actually come to fruition. Blossoming Bog Beast is going to be able to get you there so quickly. Even if Blossoming Bog Beast is your only creature and you cast a Beacon of Immortality and you gain 40 life, and now Blossoming Bog Beast is a 45/45 with trample swinging. Awesome.
Yes. So I want to talk about a card that's in this deck that I think is just a very interesting card, not only for this deck, but for another commander that I actually had taken apart. That was my, again, my brand a couple of weeks ago was talking about all these cool cards for decks that I don't play anymore, is Eudora Grave Gardener. So this is a Tree Folk Druid, a 5/5 for 5, so 4 and a green. It says whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may return it to the battlefield face down under its owner's control. It's a forest land. So your creature dies, it becomes one with the earth, and now it's just a forest land. But if you play this in Kadena Slinking Sorcery, a card, and it came in face down, so you can draw a card with Kadena.
That's very true.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I was thinking about this card, just reading its last lines of text, that it returns to its owner's control as a forest, so you could steal people's commanders and then sacrifice them, or steal people's creatures, sacrifice them, and then they turn into a forest and they'll never be able to get the creature ever again. It's like Song of the Dryads on every... But you have to steal their creatures first, and I don't know if you can do that in mono green, so you would have to play Eudora in the 99 to make that happen. But it's a cool combo, and I want to see it happen. Steal people's creatures, turn them into forests.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. The other card that I think is really interesting, Witch's Clinic. So it's a land, taps for a colorless, but has pay 2 colorless, tap it. You give a creature a lifelink until end of turn. This is a colorless land.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to put this in any Voltron deck to give your creature a lifelink. So you're dealing commander damage, but also potentially just gaining. Zindersplit and Okan. Okan swinging for like 150.
Mm-hmm. Give a lifelink.
Oh shoot! You blocked it and it didn't have trample. I guess I gain 150.
Yeah,
whatever it is. I don't think it can ever actually be 150. So I think it goes way beyond that.
Right, it has to be some exponent of 3.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So I don't.
Yeah, we'll figure it out some other time.
Yeah, we'll do the math.
Math's for the blockers.
Math is for blockers, and I am not a Quandrix person here in my Izzet deck.
Yes, I did want to talk about one other card before we moved on to reprints, and it's because it's kind of a pseudo reprint. So Pest Infestation is an XX green sorcery that says destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments and create twice X 1/1 black and green pest creature tokens with when this creature dies you gain 1 life. And the reason I say this is kind of a reprint is because there is a red sorcery called Release the Gremlins, which is an XX red that says destroy up to X target artifacts, and then you get X/2/2 red goblin or red gremlin.
Red groblins.
Groblins.
Get the groblins.
Red gremlin creature tokens. So this is it's very similar spell to that. I like playing Release the Gremlins in all of my red decks to remove artifacts. This also hits enchantments. You get to make twice as many tokens. They are not 2/2s, they're 1/1s, but they get to gain you life. So I think this is an even better card than Release the Gremlins, which I play very widely. This is green instead of red though, so it fits different decks. But I think people should not overlook this card. I will be playing this card in my Illuna deck as a nice token generator.
So let's talk some reprints, Coil.
These are some good reprints.
This one is this second most valuable deck? I'm not sure monetary wise here, but we've got Venser's Journal, Alheimer's Archive, and Well of Lost Dreams, just in artifacts here. So these are great. Venser's Journal is just shy of $8. So Venser's Journal says you have no max hand size, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 1 life for each card in your hand. Fits the life gain strategy.
It's a lot of life gain.
Alheimer's Archive, would you like to gain life? Instead, gain double that life.
Okay, deal.
But if you draw cards, also draw double those.
Wait, what if it's the first card I draw during my draw step?
Not that one,
okay.
though.
But
the rest of them,
okay, deal.
The rest of them, sure. And then Well of Lost Dreams, whenever you gain life, you can pay X, where X is equal to or less the amount of life you gained. And if you do, you draw X cards. It's a little slow. I don't play with this card very often, I'll be honest.
I'm actually surprised to see it so expensive because I remember this fitting in my $50 Firesong and Sunspeaker budget deck. So I'm surprised that the price has actually gone to... I bet it wasn't this price when I put it in my deck. $6 it says for the reprint price here on mtggoldfish.com.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean some of the other reprints though, we do see Noxious Gearhulk. It's not really worth that much, but it's got a happy place in my heart in the Kaladesh block as a enter the battlefield removal effect that also gains you life. It's also a 5/4 menace that's kind of hard to block and can get in there for some damage. So I really like Noxious Gearhulk. And then Sapling of Kulfiner got a legendary border printing in this deck, which is pretty cool.
Is that the first time we're seeing it with the fancy border?
So
I did not realize that.
Yeah, so that's cool. If you don't know, Sapling of Kulfiner is a 3 hybrid black-green 2/5 Treefolk Shaman with Indestructible that says whenever Sapling of Kulfiner attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you gain life equal to that card's toughness and lose life to its power, then put it into your hand. So that is kind of a cool card that fits Willow Dusk, the face commander, both the life gain and life loss strategy. Something I didn't mention, I just want to mention it real quick here. I really like the way that they designed Willow Dusk with both life gain and life loss. That way you can actually build the deck both ways. If you're going to rebrand the deck, remake the deck, make it your own way, you can make it a life loss deck, you can make it a life gain deck, you can go into both. I mean, technically, if you're doing life loss, you probably have to go into both. But
everybody loses life. We all play a life loss deck, right?
Right.
So artifacts here, though, you've got Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Sun Droplet, and we got that Talisman of Resilience here.
Gotta love that.
That Modern Horizons reprint. Gotta love these talismans. I love talismans.
I love.
Can I just tell you how much I love these talismans?
I love all talismans, all of them, including Pristine Talisman to just gain 1 life and add 1 generic mana for 3 mana.
There's a lot. So again, I know I said it earlier, but I think that these decks are far more focused on the 2 commanders that you can play with. There isn't a ton happening with food here. I mean, the commander itself does the thing, though.
Right. Well, and food gains you life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's there. It's fine.
But you can add in
so much more. These are so upgradable. These decks are so upgradable.
You can add in the worst combo in any standard that I've ever experienced with Cauldron Familiar and Witch's Oven.
Oh, okay.
You can play the food game.
You could throw Exquisite Blood in here and have you could throw 1 card in here and have an infinite combo.
Gross. gonna do it. No, I'm not.
In the Silver Quill deck, you can throw in Phyrexian Devourer, and with the alternate commander, I forget her name. That whenever a non-token creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it would die, you make that many 2/1 Inklings equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on the creature.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Felsia, Fang of Silverquill. That with Phyrexian Devourer, you can just have Phyrexian Devourer, exile half your deck and make 200 2/1 Inklings, and then go on with your life after that. They come in tapped, so unless you have like an enter the battlefield effect, like a Altar of the Brood or something to mill out all of your opponents, you're probably not going to win on the spot, but you're going to have a giant army of 2/1 flyers the next turn.
Can you do that at instant speed?
It's an enter the battlefield effect, I think. Or no, it's not. It's an activatable effect for Phyrexian Devourer, so you should be able to do it at instant speed.
On the Phyrexian Devourer? So that's the one that's you exile the top 7 cards of your library. Oh, yeah. But you have to exile cards from your library there.
Right, but it's an activatable ability, so you can do it at instant speed.
Correct. You just keep responding. Yeah, so you can do it at instant speed if you want.
Yeah, so you do it right before your turn and then untap with like a kajillion 2/1 flyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. I did. That was not one that I thought of. That's an interesting one.
That's the only one I've ever have heard of so far, actually.
That is a very interesting one. So we want to hear from you. Which commander decks are you excited to play? And have you made any upgrades? I have like I said, Adrix and Nev. I already made some decent upgrades to it. I did not put in a Crater Hoof. I do want to add an Endrace Forerunners, but there's enough creatures that you can convoke out creatures from your deck with Court of Calling, which it's not necessarily a cheap card either. I'm just very fortunate that I have a couple copies of some of these cards laying around to move around. But there's a lot of really cheap, token makers where just make a copy of token creature. So I had to try to avoid putting in too many legendaries because I was like, I can't.
Yeah, just throw Sakashima in there.
Can't make anything that I have out right now, so that was the issue. But that is it for our episode this week. I want to thank you for listening. If you want to contact us, you can find our podcast online at guardianprojectpodcast.com. You can find our social media online at Twitter, or I guess on Twitter at GuardianPod, and our gameplay videos at youtube.com/theguardianproject. And you can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at ATFlory.
And you can find me on Twitter at WormCoilEngine. And of course, we want to give a special thank you to our producer and editor, Ryan Nichols, and Chris Wolf, who handles all of our graphic design. We appreciate the both of you. I pointed to the both of you during those pauses. You're welcome for those. And thank you for listening. And we'll chat with y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.